Welcome to the revolution.
The CCP just cracked down on it, outlawed it, and started to send hundreds and thousands of these people to state-mandated hospitals, cutting out their organs while alive, forcefully, and then selling their organs because of the health benefits. I mean, they were the healthiest organs in the world because of the organs being so amplified in health, because of the exercises, the philosophy, a healthy mind, a healthy body, healthy spirit, and the CCP fueled a multi-billion-dollar business globally to this day.
And so it was from my understanding too that they really started to crack down on this when the percentage of people who were Falun Gong practitioners outweighed the Chinese Communist Party members. So it started to become a threat to their, their governance and their belief systems when there was this idea of, freedom of thought. And maybe you can speak to this. They were considered prisoners of conscience, right? Is that the term that they used?
Absolutely. There's four types of groups that are prisoners of conscience. The Tibetans, I'm sure you've heard about the Dalai Lama, the Tibetan movement for a long time now. It's been going on. He's been going around the world, the Dalai Lama, to stand up for the Tibetans who have been also slaughtered for their organs and persecuted. You've also got the house Christians and the Catholics that have also been forced underground. That's why they're called house Catholics and house Christians. You've got the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Enos Kanter, the famous NBA star, who's spoken candidly about this. You've heard about the Hong Kong protests as well, the invasion of the CCP into Hong Kong. But not many people have heard about what we're talking about today, the largest spiritual group. The 95% of these organs are coming from these forced live organ harvesting and brute persecution is coming from Falun Gong. So yes, those are the four main prisons of conscience. Those are the four main groups, particularly the Falun Gong. And I love what you said about because they became the largest spiritual group, the CCP was threatened by their power.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up the Uyghur Muslims because that seems to be something that's consistent, not consistent enough, obviously, with every the atrocities that are going on, but it's more of a conversation than the Falun Gong. I literally, when you reached out to me, I had never heard of that term before. I knew nothing about the ideology, and this is again coming from somebody who's interested in Eastern spirituality movements and those types of ideas, and so it was such a foreign term to me. I'd literally never heard of it. So I thought it must have been some underground, not well known spirituality movement that maybe had some weird, bizarre outlook. And so the Uyghur Muslims was something that I had heard of not again not consistently enough, but far more than the just the one email that I got from you regarding this conversation. So it's why do you think that is? Why do you think the Falun Gong is such a not even close to the conversation of the Uyghur Muslims? And obviously that's not to minimize what's happening to that group as well, but obviously this is a bigger problem as a whole. But why do you think that this is not a more consistent conversation?
Because they're making billions of dollars off the Falun Gong organs. This is a kill to order on demand. And I was testifying with my coalition, the main investigators, in the British Parliament in about 2018, I believe. And we talked about this, that the absolute deluge of propaganda, Austin, demonizing Falun Gong as some kind of villainous CIA-backed cult, which is absolutely absurd. It's ridiculous. They weren't here to take over the government. They had nothing to do with the CIA. They've got nothing. There's nothing cultish about Falun Gong at all. It's like saying yoga or Christianity is a cult. It's got nothing to
Right.
do with it. These are people who wanted to practice their spiritual beliefs in freedom. It overwhelmed the number of people in the Chinese Communist Party's membership by 30 million people, outnumbered. That's what
Wow.
made it the largest spiritual movement. And in a communist country, and I'm living in one, okay, because I'm married to a traditional Vietnamese woman, you are owned. If you think your freedoms are eroded now in the States, come to a communist country. Spend one day in a communist country and try to protest or try and talk to the central command about your problems. They don't care about that because you got no public rights, private rights. You got no gun rights. You've got no private business rights. You've got no constitutional rights. So in China, when something becomes so large that the CCP cannot control, they will outlaw it. And so the reason why people haven't learned about Falun Gong, in the beginning, the Western world wanted to know what was this life force, what was this popularity of millions of people a day, morning, noon, and night. You saw the pictures of the clip I
Hmm.
just played, practicing these slow moving exercises from all walks of life, from all classes of society. Okay, why? What was this? Before the Western world truly got to understand, as I'm sharing today on your incredible podcast and broadcast, which I'm so honored to be on, um, Red Pill Revolution, right? Um,
Yes,
the
sir.
CCP completely outlawed, banned this, suppressed it, and sent out diplomats and delegations to demonize Falun Gong in order to turn public opinion against the spiritual movement and to use them as raw materials to fund and fuel this new form of evil. Okay? And why I call it a new form of evil, this organ harvesting, is because, yes, organ harvesting and organ pillaging has been widespread throughout the world. We know it from the US, we know it from India, we know it from other places around the world. But nothing where a government is using its military, its hospitalization systems, its entire system of control, even developing an office that sits on top of the Communist Party system and the government system, controlling economic, social, and political policies for one purpose and one purpose only: to round up this vast array of organ donors, victims, excuse me, not donors, because there's no consent, sending them to state-mandated and military hospitals under the command of the Chinese Communist Party, just like the Nazis did with the Jews in cattle cars, cutting out their organs while alive on a specified date, on demand, like a grotesque restaurant or a wet market. I don't know if any of your viewers have traveled to Southeast Asia, where you see all these lobsters and all these squids and all these shrimps swimming in a bucket, and you choose, oh, I want that one, and they take it out of the wet out of the bucket. They cut it open for like a sushi restaurant. Well, this is happening to Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghur Muslims, House Christians, but not to the scale and scope that we have ever seen. And this is what I have been investigating and tracking and have confirmed for the last 23 years of my life, particularly against Falun Gong practitioners.
Yeah, and I like the way that I like that you say confirmed, right? Because I was doing some research on this, and I spoke to this a little bit last time we talked about it. But there was an article I was looking for scientific articles like EPUB, PubMed articles regarding this topic, and I think there was three total. One of those three articles was basically like quote unquote, disproving the idea that the Falun Gong were being utilized for this organ harvesting. And it was such a it was a 23-page paper, 23 pages that I read through to get to this information. And they tried to disprove it as being like this folklore. So what they said is because from my understanding of the Falun Gong ideology is that the idea is that there's this wheel of energy, right, inside of you, I guess is the general. I don't know. I've read briefly on the ideology. So there's this wheel of energy inside of your body, and that wheel of energy is life force. And so they tried to use that analogy to make this idea of the organ harvesting be some type of like analogy or folklore surrounding them taking the
Conspiracy.
life, yeah, conspiracy surrounding them taking the life force from these individuals, from their wheel of energy through their so it was just really gross to see somebody scientifically and obviously probably paid for by the CCP to write this
Of
type of
course.
article, or in some way shape or form push to do this, because why in the world would you delegitimize such a horrific act that's very well known to happen?